Okay, recording has started.
Excellent. Thanks, Lily. Calling to order the March 10 Governing Board meeting for Maple Broadband. Welcome. Some interesting items to review with you today, and also kind of give you a view into what's going to be coming up in coming months. I'll first of all entertain a motion to approve the agenda, which has been posted for a while. Is there a motion? Got a motion from Carl, a second from someone, please?
Second.
We have a second from Shannon. All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your hand or say aye, please.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Awesome. Let's quit while we're ahead. What do you think? Let's see. All right. So minutes, along with the agenda, Ellie also distributed the minutes from the February 10 Governing Board meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Second. Bill?
Second.
Okay, we got a second. Thank you.
Steve, before we move to a vote discussion, there was a friendly amendment that came in over email. Paul Nikolic pointed out that Bill Farmery showed up late, but he was in attendance. So I have noted him I have a working draft that shows him as a member of the public attending the meeting.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay.
And
So-
in the
Yeah, Bill.
in the minutes, my last name is spelled wrong. Not that that matters,
Oh,
but it's
That does matter. I didn't fix that part. I will fix that too.
okay. It's just it's an I that needs to move closer to the other end.
Okay. Oh yeah,
all the letters,
Farmier.
all the letters are there. It's just
You got a French name.
yes.
Either way, it's French.
Yes.
Bill, I can sympathize with
He's
your
true.
with your problem.
Farmier,
The last name like
Lumiere.
last name like Huffaker, it's real often you get things not quite right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I've made that change as well. Thank you, Bill. I didn't catch that.
Okay. It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, so with the one modification that described with Ellie, I think there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes. And is there a second? A second from Nancy. All in favor of approving those minutes with that one amendment, raise your hand or say aye, please.
I
Thank you, everyone. Any disapprovals? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
So it's Zapata and Ross abstaining.
Thank you for catching that, Ellie. Before we get started, we'll open the floor for any public comments. Anyone on this call would care to make any comments of one sort or another? Okay. Chair report. Okay, I actually have a little presentation this time, so let's do that. Uh-oh, here we go. One moment while I get my act together. There it is. Okay. So this is just kind of some background information on what we've been up to in our executive committee. These are the two cabinets that we are just placing a purchase order, issuing a purchase order on just in the next couple of days. So what we've done in the last 2 weeks is issued an RFP out for all the hardware that we're going to need for the construction work that we'll be doing as a result of our BEAD award. And the cabinets represent a significant share of what we need because all of our fiber is going to be terminated into those cabinets. And there's usually a long lead on these items. Right now, the report we're getting from distributors is 2 to 4 months. I don't see that as an issue based on our current other challenges. So we're pretty pleased that we're going to be in a position to process orders for these items. So the Middlebury Central Hub, you can see, is a little bit larger than the Ripton Hub. Those two boxes at the bottom are batteries. And we sized the cabinet to accommodate not only what our immediate demand is, but with growth that exceeds the population of the area served. So all of Middlebury is covered by this cabinet. And if the population of Middlebury were to increase by about 30 or 40%, we still have enough real estate in the cabinet to accommodate that demand. The other good news is that the batteries that are in there are sized for that large demand, and that sizing is 4 hours of uptime. So if the cabinet were completely full, serving a whole lot of people, it'll still, in the absence of power, will be continuing able to serve subscribers for 4 hours, which should be more than enough that we will need to restore service in a timely fashion. The Ripton Hub, same deal. The bottom two cabinets are batteries. We're the executive committee, and I'd say probably on behalf of Maple Broadband, we're all very aware that Ripton is kind of off in the wings in terms of their location. And Ripton is not very easy to get to, and Ripton has in the past experienced some challenges related to inclement weather. And so we were concerned about that. So we worked with our cabinet manufacturer to specify a configuration that will outlast that any interruptions. So we're looking at about at a fully populated cabinet, which is in excess of what we will need on our initial build. We will have up to 8 hours of uptime, which is perfect for us. I think we're really pleased about that. And so we're a day or two away from issuing a PO for these cabinets, as well as all the other cabinets that we're going to need, plus some other hardware that we need when we go to actually physically build out our hubs. This is a bigger part of this that I want you to be aware of. We have some bylaws changes we'd like to talk with you about, and under the terms of our bylaws currently, we need to get our governing board to approve any changes in two governing board meetings in succession. So we're not looking for your approval today, but we're giving you a heads up that at our next month meeting, our April 7 meeting, we'll be presenting these to you and asking for your approval. And I'm sure we're pretty far along on getting these items finalized. So I expect that you'll receive copies of these changes well in advance of the actual April 7 meeting. So this is mostly just to give you a heads up. As it stands, regular meetings as defined in statute were set for the specific day, as you can see there. And that's the way it's currently written in our bylaws, and it's restrictive. As a matter of fact, our regular meeting, our annual meeting, is going to be held on the second Tuesday of May, and we think it's reasonable to kind of open up that language a little bit so that we can hold our annual meetings with a little bit more flexibility. So this is the kind of language we're currently thinking about enacting with your approval. Conflicts of interest. This one came in mid-year, and it was adopted by the state, and it is you can see this statute that's specified here, which provides finite detail on exactly what needs to be done to testify to compliance with conflicts of interest. And there's actually a little online session need to go through, and our compliance officer will track what's done. And so we are going to put that into place. We're not going to put any specific language. We're simply going to point this to what's in the statute. And if and when the statute changes it allows us to not have to play around anymore with this clause.
Question?
Yes.
Would it be possible for the board to send the governing board a copy of the Vermont State Conflict of Interest Policy?
We all have access to that. The state of Vermont has statutes posted online, and those statutes are we are using as a basis for all the work that we're doing, Ross. So I'm not sure what benefit we gain by doing what you're describing. Essentially,
Well, I'm just thinking, before I vote to approve that, I'd like to read the state of Vermont's conflict of interest policy. So
Yeah, oh, yeah.
it would be helpful if somebody could just send me a link, something.
Fair enough. And that's a really good, yeah, absolutely. We will be happy to do that. There is a little bit more content in there, so I think that's reasonable. One item that would be of interest to you is that truly the only real hard requirements for for conflicts of interest is the officers need to participate in training, and there's only 4 officers at Maple Broadband, and so those of us that are not officers, they're probably not necessarily obligated to do anything, but let's leave that open, and we can continue that conversation on April 7, Ross. But thanks for that suggestion. Absolutely, we'll point you to the proper language online so you can read it yourself.
Thank you.
We today kind of came to a discovery that how we define quorum in our bylaws deviates, or is, I don't even want to call it deviates, but just say it's not the same as the definition of quorum that shows up in statute. And we've just begun to have that conversation internal to the executive committee on exactly how to parse this. But I think essentially, if and when we conclude that we need to make some changes in quorum language, you'll see that in the as an item to vote for as well, since it would all be, again, would be a change in our bylaws.
Just to clarify, Steve, the statute is the enabling legislation, and the statute is the law of the land. If our bylaws are different, we need to make them conform with what the law requires. So I suppose we could have something more restrictive, but we cannot have something less restrictive than required by statute. And this isn't anything surprising. We've been talking about this in previous meetings around delegate attendance, because we need to have more than the number of. This is why it's important to have there be people appointed, because if you don't show up, then we have a problem with quorum.
And so this topic is going to come up again, and I think really one of the items that we've kind of obsessed with you over the last 1 or 2 governing board meetings is concerns about achieving quorum on a regular basis, and we'll be talking a little bit about that under item 7. So we'll get to that shortly. We have 3 other policies that are in progress, and I think we need to make a decision internal to the executive committee at this point, which of these rise to the level of seeking approval of our governing board. I think in the case, for example, of the second bullet there, the personnel policy, as you know, we have 1 employee, Ellie, and I think and we've spent quite a bit of time internal to the executive committee refining that personnel policy, and from my opinion is that it's not necessary for us to gain governing board approval of the personnel policy. Code of conduct and participation policy, we'll have to have that discussion internal to the executive committee, at which point we can talk further about it. Questions? More to come. Thanks, everyone. That's my chair report. Nominating committee. Shannon, can you help us with this one?
Sure. So, speaking of our bylaws, in our bylaws, we have a clause about having a nominating committee that every year convenes and then puts forth a slate of the executive committee, including officers, and that nominating committee is elected at this meeting. We talked about it a little bit last month. They will meet offline, and then at our annual meeting in May, put forth the slate of officers for us to vote on. Last month,
I put
Justin, I'm sorry. Last month, Justin Boyer, I hope I get your name right, Skolostra, and Mike Sheets all expressed interest in participating in the nominating committee. We can also take nominations for the nominating committee from the floor. And if we don't have any from the floor, I would make a motion that we elect Justin, Ben, and Mike to the nominating committee.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm kind of stepping in your role. Hearing none. No discussion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye or raising a hand.
Aye.
I think that was everybody, but if there are any opposed or any abstentions. There you go. And Ellie, if you don't mind, I would be happy to step in as staff to help coordinate like I did last year with the nominating committee, just so that it's off your plate and you don't have to deal with it.
I would love if you did that, Shannon. Thank you very much for the offer.
Very good. Back to you, Steve.
Great, thank you. Attendance. Here we go again. One moment here. One more screen share here. Where is it? So you may recall that we sent kind of a follow-up with our delegates and alternates, trying to identify suitable dates for our monthly governing board meetings. And what you can see in front of you, I'll scroll down a bit in a minute, but what you can see is each delegate and alternate was asked what days could they not attend? What days could they not attend? And there were a few that basically were pretty much wide open. They could attend any day, and others, it kind of varied, but I think we got a pretty good response altogether, fairly comprehensive across the board. And one thing you'll notice if you're looking for a hole, you'll see that there's a hole here in the third Monday. There's nobody that was polled who expressed an inability to attend a meeting on the third Monday of the month. So your executive committee kind of came to the conclusion that we can gain a greater likelihood of quorum by simply moving our current governing board meeting day, which is currently on the second Tuesday of the month, out to the third Monday of the month. So the executive committee has recommended that we proceed with that. There's kind of the details associated with it would be that, well, if the governing board agrees to that change, when do we do it? And we collectively at the executive committee suggested that the first month that we move it on, we have our meetings on the third Monday instead of the second Tuesday, it happens in June. And that's kind of, I think it's appropriate because we've got other business to attend to this next month as far as quorum and votes for bylaw changes, as well as our annual meeting, which happens in May. And rather than disrupt matters, we thought we would just best to leave the current date until we go through the annual meeting in May, at which point we've completed all those type of tasks, and then we move to a new meeting day. So that's kind of the current plan. I guess I'm probably going to shut this down, and I'm going to entertain a motion, but I guess first of all, does anyone have any questions or any concerns about what we've done here? Yeah. Well, so I'm going to do my best to cook up a motion while looking for a second on. I'm going to make a motion that we move our governing board meetings effective in June. We move our governing board meeting date from 5 p.m. on the second Tuesday of the month to 5 p.m. on the third Monday of the month. I don't know that I did that right, but that's the basic concept. Does that make sense to everyone? And if it makes sense to you, I'll entertain a motion to second, rather. Got a second from Nancy, thanks. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of that move in June, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Excellent, excellent.
I just want to say that we must remark on what a miracle it was with the number of busy people on this governing board, that there was one day of the month that everyone felt they could do. You know, that it was the only one that worked for everybody. So it looked like a miracle to me.
It's a Maple Broadband miracle.
Indeed.
We got to finish the vote, Nancy. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's great. Thank you guys so much. To be clear, I think just like to publicize to you some of the votes that we'll be looking to do at our next meeting in April. We're also going to, be fairly reasonable but fairly persistent to make sure you understand about the date that we're moving. I think the other thing, again, as a reminder, this won't work unless we get quorum in April and in May. And then I think maybe the pressure is going to be off a little bit once we're in June, because everybody should be able to attend and it'll be much easier to tolerate changes. Zapata.
I just want to confirm then that the date of our June meeting is Monday, June 15th, which is the third Monday of the month.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion on this? It doesn't seem like a big deal, but I think it's going to make a huge difference for us. We're going to reduce the amount of anxiety that we have on these things. Leslie.
I just want to note, I think you have the wrong alternate for Waltham. I believe Jeff Glassberg stepped down. So I have a new person. I don't know if you've been informed or not.
It may be the same kind of thing, Leslie, that came up with other governing board members, which is that formally it needs to be done through the select board appointing an alternate.
Okay.
And so that may well be what hasn't happened. I think if it were me, I wouldn't worry about it right now, Leslie, because Nancy's on her list of things to do once we completed our meeting today, is she's going to reach out to every select board and seek those appointments. So that'll be the opportunity. You can keep an eye on it. Maybe you can kind of make sure that alternate gets added in there, but that's probably going to be the best way to cover it.
Great. I won't worry. Thank you.
You bet. Okay.
You're muted.
If I could just add, it'd be great if you or that alternate would contact your town clerk and let them know that that person is willing to be the alternate.
Already done.
For your town. Thank you.
Okay. Updates. I guess I'm going to look to Ellie. I'm going to stop talking for a minute here. Ellie, could you give us an update on BEAD, please?
Yeah, it's my turn to start talking. So, okay. So BEAD is not too much changed since last month. As far as I'm aware, the state of Vermont is still awaiting its final legal confirmations and agreement from the NTIA, as well as is waiting awaiting approval from NIST, which is another federal organization. So we're still waiting on final federal sign-offs at the state level. And obviously, until that happens, we can't even think about getting our grant agreement. But as you well know, Steve and I have been progressing, Steve and I and others, but Steve and I primarily have been progressing for many months now, working through the detailed design that will be required in anticipation of BEAD. And obviously, as Steve mentioned earlier, working through the bills of material for what items we are planning to procure for BEAD. And just so it's there on the public record, not only do we have Jose here visiting from the VCBB, that's the Vermont Community Broadband Board, for those of you who don't know Jose, but just to clarify, we are being very, very careful to separate what is BEAD funded from what is not BEAD funded. So some of the addresses that will be served out of both the new Ripton and Middlebury hubs, many of them will be funded with BEAD and some of them will be self-funded. And so we're making sure that the equipment that goes into those cabinets as well is separated, and that we're complying with all of the program requirements around the Build America, Buy America, and just making sure we tick all the boxes around the procurement of BEAD, or materials that are intended to be used as part of the BEAD build. So that's what's going on grant-wise and planning-wise. And I think the other thing that's worth noting is the VCBB and their consultant firm that's helping with administration and grant compliance. We're starting the process of identifying what are the routes and what are the permitting requirements on those routes. So I've been doing some work, and our friends at WCVT, who are our contractors for the purposes of this project, and obviously our operating partners, also working with them to gather the information that they need to feed into that, because it's essentially a joint project, and it's our responsibility ultimately as the BEAD awardee. It's overall our responsibility to meet all the program requirements and to build to the addresses that we specified we would build to. But in terms of how we're breaking up the work within the project, it's my job as executive director of Maple Broadband to understand what permits are required for what we're planning to build, and then our friends at Waitsfield are tasked with identifying what permits they need, as well as the engineering design for the portions of the network that are going to be within their ILEC company footprint. So working together to merge those things and get that all done. And one little bit of anecdotal news, this matters, I think, more to me than to anyone else, other than maybe Steve, who's also kind of a nerd about these things. But one of the nerd in a good way, Steve. One of the things that we flagged for a long time is that we're going to need to get a permit from the Green Mountain and Finger Lakes National Parks for some of the network which is to be built in Ripton. So even to get from Middlebury to Ripton, we need to have a permit to put our fiber optic cable into the conduit that we are installing under Green Mountain Power's permit. And so we need that obviously to get anything into Ripton. And there's a couple of portions of plant that will be built in Ripton where we're going to need a permit because it's new construction. So for all of this, there's a permit application process, and it is a lengthy process. And it had been the case until, I'm not sure when they changed it, but my understanding was that the permit windows opened only twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. And in an effort to make sure that I didn't accidentally miss the spring window through being busy with other things, I reached out to the contact at the Forest Service, and she informed me that there have been changes federally to how this is done, and there are no longer any windows. So that's good news and bad news, but I think also just understanding that that's the long pole in the tent. One of my high priority tasks is to understand the permit applications of that to get that going, because we've known for a long time that permit could take. The guidance she gave us the last time is it's about a year from when you submit, but there are changes happening federally to try and speed things up, so maybe it'll be faster than that, but we're planning on a worst case scenario, so just knowing that it's about a year from submission, obviously that's a critical path item, so I want to get that one in sooner than later. So I'm no longer waiting for the permit window to open, I'm just waiting to get around to submit the application. That's my BEAD update. Did I miss anything, Steve, or executive committee? And is there anyone have any questions?
What do you think, Ellie? I know you're not going to be able to give me a guess on this, but what's your best guess on we're actually going to be able to begin construction?
Ooh. I don't know, Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, as we've talked about before, there's two things. One is I mean, the main thing is we are under the terms of the request for application. We are prohibited from beginning construction, including make ready, until we have passed through until we've gotten the go ahead from the NEPA process. So that's part of what I mentioned earlier of compiling all of the permits and our understanding of that, and working with VCBB to help us understand how to navigate that process. So I sincerely hope that when we meet again in a month, I'll have a more informed answer as to what that looks like, because we're also planning to break apart our planned build into a couple of different NEPA projects, as it were, for some tactical and logistical reasons. So working through all of that, the vast majority of what we're building should be considered a categorical exclusion because we're adding aerial fiber to existing utility poles. So having said that, you're not even allowed to do that until you've ticked all the boxes. So I couldn't tell you. Maybe Jose, if you want to, no pressure, but if you have anything you want to add, I'm really hoping it can be later this year, but we won't know until we know. And then the other thing too is we won't until we get our grant agreement. So we could get the NEPA sign off, and if we get the NEPA sign off for one or more of the NEPA project areas before we get our grant agreement, then my understanding at least is we can proceed on our own recognizance, knowing that should something fall through with the grant, we won't be reimbursed. But I think that would be our plan. Jose, anything you want to add?
I really don't have any, I wouldn't have any details to really share on that, but I will say that, yeah, until we get all the environmental permitting and stuff squared away, you don't want to be doing anything, because they've been pretty straight with us that they're looking at that, making sure that there's no disturbance, there's nobody going out there doing anything. So we're working and trying to coordinate state agencies, pole owners, all the various entities, and of course RSM has been working with you. They sent out a survey asking for information, and we're doing what they call clash detection, basically looking at the design and seeing where in which areas there might be some issues and what permits might be needed. And it's, in this case, Maple's providing what they think is going to be a need, and then they're going to compare it to what they have assessed. And so it's a little bit of a process, but we are still waiting ourselves to hear from the federal government. So there was this big announcement and all that, but it was just, I don't know, for them to be able to give a big announcement that they have approved, but really they didn't exactly approve. We don't have a signed approved. We don't have a bunch of things. So we're waiting. We're hoping. Right now, our executive director is in DC, and the person, Alexei, who's in charge of BEAD, is in DC right now. And they're actually meeting with people. I was just at a session today, virtually myself, on permitting. So hopefully, some positive comes out of that. But as you know, lately there's been a lot of tumultuous things happening in DC. So we're hoping.
Nancy, go ahead.
I wonder, Ellie, if you would remind everyone about where in the county our BEAD grant and WCBT's BEAD grant will be building when the grant comes in.
Well, there's addresses in practically every one of our member towns, except for the 4 that are Cornwall, Shoreham, Orwell, and Whiting, which are part of GoNetspeed's ILEC service footprints, because GoNetspeed opted into enhanced ACAM, so those are considered federally funded. So there are some addresses in practically every town. I think the bulk of our new physical build is going to be, I'm just working from my head going south to north, is going to be in Leicester, Salisbury, Middlebury, Ripton, New Haven, Ferrisburg, and little bits and pieces of other towns. Like there's a couple of roads in Waltham that have been omitted because they were not eligible under ARPA and are eligible under BEAD. And then for WCBT, they have addresses scattered throughout, but their 2 primary towns are Lincoln and Starksboro.
Thank you.
Ellie,
My pleasure.
One other thought for you, Ellie. We did receive contributions from quite a few of our member towns that came from their American Rescue Plan funds that they received back a few years ago. Can we build now with those funds without any constraints?
We can, but we should not build BEAD routes with those funds. kind of an obvious statement, but just to make sure that it's clear. So when I get to the dashboard, I'll talk about that a little bit more. And I just have one other editorial comment, which is that I've spoken about the VCBB and their consultant RSM, and I wanted to acknowledge that obviously we have a long history with the VCBB as our grantor and the entity that monitors our grant compliance. And I think this is a great example of where the VCBB is providing a service through RSM to help us navigate this process and understand and make sure we're not missing any requirements which would set us back, which we would otherwise have to pay a consultant ourselves to do, because this is a complex process. I've not been through NEPA before. No one in our district has been through NEPA before. And you obviously don't want to be doing something with this much complexity where you can't start until you tick all the boxes without the benefits of expertise. So I wanted to say I think it's a wonderful thing to be collaborating with the VCBB in this new way as well.
Excellent.
And that's all I have to say about BEAD.
Perfect. Let's move on. Affordability programs, Ellie?
Yeah, affordability programs, and then I'll take that into the marketing discussion. So as you all know, we recently launched 2 new affordability programs. At least this is how we think of it. So one is our LEAF program, the Local Equitable Access Fund. So that's a $30 a month subsidy for qualifying households and a free installation. And then linked with that is the VCBB's Affordable Long Drop program, which we've removed the word long from it for marketing purposes because we didn't want to confuse people to think it only applied to long drops, because it applies to any drop where there's costs in excess of our standard installation fee. So they could be, the most common use case actually is buried conduit. So we have, at the moment, we have 8 subscribers that are receiving the LEAF subsidy. And again, if you may recall, we had grandfathered in 2 customers who had been receiving the Affordable Connectivity Program subsidy from the federal government when those funds ran out. And we did not have a way until recently to be able to validate the eligibility of new households. So the 2 that have been receiving subsidy all along have been re-verified, which I think is it's a great thing, because it means that it's a good validation of our decision to continue that, even though we didn't have a way to re-verify. And then we have added 6 more. So that's really good for an initial launch of the program, I think, just given our subscriber base. And we're continuing to get the word out, both as is required by the Affordable Long Drop program, which I'll get to in a moment, to make sure that we prioritize the drop portion for eligible low-income households, but also just generally because it's the right thing to do. We have this program, it's budgeted, and we want to make sure that people who could benefit from it and that need the benefit are aware of it. So, so that's on the LEAF side. And the Affordable Long Drop program, if someone has qualified for LEAF, then they automatically qualify for the Affordable Long Drop program if that applies. So if someone who qualifies for LEAF that's a new installation, if it's a simple aerial installation, that's straightforward. We move forward with the installation. We waive the standard installation fee, so it's entirely free for them to get the service. And if they require conduit, then they're going on the list for the Affordable Drop program. So of the people who have signed up for the, so we've had actually, I don't have the count handy, but I think there was something like 25, between 25 and 30 people have filled out the form for the Affordable Long Drop program. 11 of them we have verified as being in our active service territory, and many of them were actually already previously scouted and listed as needing conduit. So this is great because those are the exact sorts of households we want to be targeting. That said, we have something like over 150 in our database that are in the needs conduit state. So one of the things that I spoke to our marketing firm about earlier today is doing more automated outreach to those households. We had some talk around the form of the emails and making sure they get opened and making sure the messaging is tightened up. So we have some optimizations we're doing there. And then eventually we're going to get to the point of starting to call these households to make sure that we understand that, make sure that they understand that this program is there. So it's part of what we're doing to be drumming up interest in this program. And does anyone have any questions on the affordability programs? Because I have sort of started to bleed into marketing, but that has been a focus of marketing over the last 4 to 6 weeks, of creating not only awareness of these programs, but also working on the systems. So the landing pages, the application forms, the automated emails, just to make sure that we had an operational system to be able to track the interest in these programs. And we gave people a nice, clear way to understand the eligibility or their potential eligibility and to express interest. So that has been a focus. And there's a few other things that we've talked about today that will be the focuses going forward. So any questions or comments on the affordability programs before I move on? Justin.
Hey, Ellie. Yeah, is there any way you could have the marketing firm throw together some like talking points or something about it? Because at town meeting day, I wanted to talk to people about it, but I didn't totally have all the details. And I was like, I touched on it loosely, but not like in depth. And I feel like I could have done a better job.
That is a great idea. So what I will do right after this meeting is I'll send out to the entire governing board. We have a one-pager flyer that exists for exactly that purpose. So, I mean, you could, if you wanted, print it out, but it really is just a quick reference that you can use for your own selves. And then if you're corresponding with someone electronically, you can send them a flyer that touches on all the key points. So I will get those out.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellie.
And also our webpage, if you go to our webpage right now, at the very top, they've changed the webpage so that temporarily the first thing you see above the fold is announcing these programs and linking to them, because what's in the one pager is the exact same information, just in a different format, which is available on the application pages for LEAF and Affordable Drop Program, respectively. Jose, I will send that to you as well. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so moving on to marketing, we've talked about affordability. So there's two other things that we've kind of had a bit of a kickoff call on 2 weeks ago, and they're starting to move forward on more campaign planning. So one of them is we want to be targeting, so we're in Addison County and we're local, and one of the things that we want to be doing, both to give back and because I think frankly it's both good public relations and also potentially good marketing, is to focus on the nonprofits that we have in our service territory. Especially as we start to get into Middlebury, we're going to be passing through a whole bunch of them with bead routes. So we came up with an idea where we offer nonprofits our highest speed at the cost of the lowest. So basically, you pay the lowest fee and you get the highest speed, because for us that's a relatively cheap thing to do, and it seems like a win-win. And then part of that as well is it then opens the door to relationships, because again, a lot of us sit on nonprofit boards. It's a great way to build some goodwill, build awareness, potentially also encourage some of these to be communicating this out to their stakeholders, and just it's the sort of thing that the big guys wouldn't do. So that's one of the things, and that's a good point. We could probably do exactly that, Jose. So I will I'll take that one down. So we're working on the launch of that to make sure we have all the details, and obviously we'll need to speak with WCBT to get the billing sorted out ahead of time, but you can expect to see that launch, I would say, sometime in the next month or so. And then the other thing we're doing is, if some of you who've been here for a while may recall, and some of you who are newer won't recall, but it's good to remind everyone anyway, obviously as a local ISP, we're all sitting here as volunteers or as staff because we know why we're here and we know the value proposition. So when we first brought on London Middlebury, I think it was about two years now ago, something like that, the very first thing we had to do was better understand our customer base and what our customer base wanted, so that when we're talking to our customers, we're speaking to them in the language they understand and with a value proposition that speaks to them. And what they discovered at the time is that customers, many of them understood the local, some of them didn't, but the bottom line is the meat and potatoes. What matters to the customers is price, speed, and quality of customer service. And we think we can compete on the quality of customer service, at least after someone's installed. And especially when we're competing now fiber to fiber with Fidium and GoNetspeed, that's the same product. Combination of reasons, they're both quite aggressive with their pricing at the moment, and so it creates a little bit of a awkward situation when if someone is lower. That's one of the reasons for the affordability programs, is to reduce that barrier to people who would like to buy from us and would like the benefits of buying local but struggle to afford it. And so one of the thoughts that I've had all along, and we're now getting to the point of really pushing this out into the market, is that it is our job to educate people about why this choice matters and what some of the reasons are. So that is the second campaign, which we've started to talk about, which is really an education around not just who we are and why, but why buying local matters, and doing more. And because we've been talking about this all along, but We want to be doing more talking about why it matters to buy from us, why we're here, where their dollars are going, how many of them we're reinvesting. And obviously, this is the sort of thing we're having the affordability programs. LEAF is self-funded, and the focus on the nonprofits is another good example. We have some real tangible examples of what we're doing to give back to the community and to be a good local player. So just really trying to bang that drum a little bit over the next few months. Zapata.
For the nonprofits, are you looking for nonprofits with brick and mortar in the service areas, or nonprofits in general that provide services within the service areas?
Well, we're looking for someone that would be a subscriber, obviously, and it needs to be someone to whom we could provide service. So I think the former, if I understood your question properly. Okay. And then the final thing I want to talk about on the marketing side is we have talked on and off over the months and years around volunteer engagement from a marketing perspective, either from governing board members or other members of the community. And so London Middlebury had put together, I think I might have shared it last time or one of the previous meetings, a tentative schedule of the sorts of events that we're planning to sponsor and the sorts of events where we're going to be tabling or would like to be tabling. And we have in the budget this year for those to be professionally staffed by London Middlebury, but if we can, again, save some costs by having volunteers, that's a good thing. So something I've tasked them with very specifically is I want to make it as easy as possible for someone who wants to volunteer to be able to figure out what to do, because we're all really busy people. And if we have to kind of think about, okay, here's a time slot, but what's needed? Can I show up 1 minute before? Do I need to show up half an hour before? Do I need a car? Do I need this? So basically, I've said make it as easy as possible to understand the ask, and we will go from there. So that's one of the other tasks they're working on. Okay, that's all I have on the marketing side. The next item is the annual customer satisfaction survey. Steve, did you want to run with this one?
Sure. It should be pretty brief. All right. So every year about this time, WCBT performs a customer satisfaction survey for their entire service area, which would include not only their customers in, say, Waitsfield and whatnot, but also other parts of their state, and including all of Maple Broadband's towns. So let me make this bigger here for a minute here. And so it's a fairly short document. And I'm not, for a variety of reasons, I'm not going to touch on everything in it, but I want you to be aware that this kind of marketing work is kind of a standard step in what WCBT does to make sure that they're providing the level of service to the subscribers that their subscribers expect. So it's a 3-pager. It's pretty dense. There's a good deal of data here, some of which may or may not make sense to you. We're not going to cover this today with you because it's so dense and we've got a lot more ground to cover today. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to know that this is being done. My first thought on this was that we would we'd be happy to send this out to you. And Kurt Grundling, who is the main marketing person at WCBT, he's kind of the expert on this stuff. And he is offered to spend time with our governing board members, any that are interested in reviewing that survey and helping them understand in greater detail about it. So I'm not quite sure how to attack it. I'm happy, as I said, to send this out, but I think if and when you conclude that you need help understanding what it is you're looking at, please reach out to me and we'll gather some names of individuals that want more in detail review, and then I'll pass those contact information folks to Kurt, and he will organize a call with you folks at your convenience. Adam.
Actually, it's me, Steve.
Yep.
Just wondering, is this something that Maple Broadband is thinking we might want to survey our part of the network? And you maybe use their survey or a modified version of their survey?
Well, a lot of what's in this survey is all about us.
Yeah.
And it's recognized the focus of Maple Broadband, so it may be sufficient. And I guess from our perspective, well, I'll speak for Ellie and me. I think we're really don't have a lot of bandwidth to work on this kind of stuff, and as a result, I think we're happy that WCVT is taking the lead on this. I think what I'd be more happy to do, or what I'd suggest is, if you review this and you think, well, what about this? What about this? It's missing much of Maple Broadband towns. Then I assure you that Kurt would be happy to take any changes into account on the next go around.
Well, I think, as we grow, it obviously would be something I think that would be beneficial and useful for us to do for all the towns, not just the WCVT towns.
Understood.
I think it covers both Maple Broadband and WCVT towns. Doesn't it?
Yeah, but it covers their subscribers across their towns and our towns. So there's some towns, like for example, New Haven, where I live, where 2/3 of the town is their territory, their ILEC footprint, and the other third is ours. So it's not covering our subscribers, as far as I understand. But it is a good point, and it's something that we could speak with London Middlebury about, because that was part of what they did as part of their initial market research, was some customer survey. So it may not be that difficult to resuscitate that, because we did do some work a couple of years ago with aligning our questions with their questions so that we could have as much apples to apples comparison as possible. So I'll put that back on their list, because to Steve's point, we have a marketing firm we're paying to do this sort of a thing. So let's see if we can have them do that as part of their retainer. It's only once a year. So great point. Thank you.
Anything else on that? Like I said, I'll send this out to everyone on this, in our, all of our alternates and delegates. And then if you want to dig deeper, just reach out to me, and then I'll connect you with Kurt to dig into it a little bit if you want to. That's it for that, Ellie. Let's move on to financial dashboard.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So this is the dashboard. You've all seen this before, at least once, even those of you who are newer. So here's where we are with the active grants. I wanted to, so the audit is next on the agenda, but one of the things that I wanted to call out is, as part of the audit, when we're going and looking at the finances really carefully, we took this as an opportunity to, as just part of the year end and before submitting our grant reports to VCBB, to just make some changes to which grants we assign certain costs. So this is a little bit different than what I presented last month. So for example, the pre-construction grant, that's where marketing gets paid for. That is where my salary gets paid for, insurance, financial services, audits, stipends for our officers. So that is some of our most flexible money, whereas the construction grant money can only be used for purposes of construction, and the construction grant is less flexible than the town ARPA that we can use for whatever we want, because the construction grant money has to be used, first of all, to build our obligations under the construction grant, and then second of all, in alignment with the policy rules of the VCBB. So this is just a way of saying we shifted some costs. Like the Make Ready, we had been charging to the construction grant, to the pre-construction grant, and we moved the Make Ready costs from, forget if it was the whole year or just the fourth quarter, but we moved a lot of costs between grants in terms of the internal cost accounting. So that is why you'll see the construction grant is showing a on paper that we have spent more money than what we've actually drawn down. And that's fine, of course, because we have the cash to do that, and it doesn't really matter as an internal accounting thing. But this shows you where we are now in terms of how much money is left in these different pots of money. And when it comes to the construction grant, we have another, looks like almost, if that number is right. That number is not right. Sorry, there was a change that I made, and that is a bug. There's about $168,000 that's left in that grant, I think. We had, sorry, I don't want to get into the weeds. Anyway, that's an error. Ignore that particular number. But of the construction grant, we have a couple $100,000 left that we can draw down. And we are very close to being able to meet our construction grant obligations for our phase 2, which is then going to have us meet a milestone that will let us invoice to draw down almost all of the remaining construction grants funding. And the remainder will come down 6 months after we close out. So I actually just earlier today wrote an email to the VCBB's inspection firm to start to tee that up. And we have our weekly construction call tomorrow. And yeah, last we heard, everything had been, the fiber had been hung for all of the areas that we need to get the last couple miles to get over the line. And we just needed the splicing and testing. I believe even the splicing was done. We were just waiting on the test results to be reviewed and validated. So we will very soon be turning those areas up into active service. And there's also a couple customers that are waiting for service. It'll be great to get them served. But also it's really exciting. We started this in October of 2022. And it looks like we'll be wrapping up and getting to substantial completion, hopefully this month. I'll be surprised if it isn't. And then how long it'll take to actually get all the paperwork done where we receive the sign off from the VCB that we've met all the grant deliverables would take a little bit longer. We have to have we did this again a couple of years ago, but if those of you who are newer, we need to have the VCB's consultant firm go out physically into the field and check what we've built to make sure that we've built it properly and according to spec and in compliance with the requirements. We also need to give them a lot of written records to indicate what we've done with this money. But the end is in sight. And so I know I've been saying that for a few months now, but it's now closer to being in sight. So I'm really excited to get us over that finish line. And that'll also let us move our attention on to how do we spend the rest of this money and, of course, getting BEAD kicked off. So that's where we are from a cash standpoint. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So the operations tab. So
Can you make it bigger? Is it possible to
Sure.
zoom in? Thank you.
Is that better? Okay.
Some, yeah.
Okay, I can make it a little bigger still. Okay, so our year-to-date, we're only 2 months in. This is through the end of February, but our year-to-date total revenue is just over 131,000. So that's looking pretty good. And we are, as we were last month, the last time I reviewed the business model back in September or October in preparation for the annual budget, I had expected these last couple miles would come online by now, and they haven't, but they will very shortly. And so our actual mileage and passings are less than our plan for that reason. We had only 6 new installations last month. It was a short month, but it's also the winter and the ground is frozen. So we have a number that are waiting on rotting and a number that have made it into the Affordable Drop Program queue. And yeah, as of now, we are sitting at 667 active subscribers. And then I added this new row as well for the LEAF recipients, so we can start to track that over time. And yeah, that's about it for the updates on this. Anyone have any questions? Bill, if you have a question, you're muted.
I have one quick question on the data. So
Yeah.
the LEAF recipients, are they in addition to the 667 or above and beyond?
They are out of the 667. So
they're in that number?
Yes. So there's 667, of which 8 are LEAF recipients,
Yeah.
and of which 122 are telephone subscribers. And that's actually interesting because I was only realizing today and looking at this number that our telephone subscribers is 25.5%. The business model, I always like to be conservative in the business model, but we had been down below 20% for a good portion of last year. And so for some reason, consumer behavior is unpredictable. It could be that new service territories, or it could be changing consumer preferences. I don't know, but it's interesting that our the percent of people taking telephone service has increased from what it had been. So it's a good thing. Not going to complain about it. Extra incremental revenue. Oh, actually, this is the row that was meant to be having the LEAF. So I'm going to move this 8 so that in future you will see it down here because the business plan had projected up to 5% receiving a discount. There we go. 800% month-over-month change. Okay, fine. That's wrong, actually. Is a percent, it is. There we go, 1%. Better. Better. Okay, any more questions? Someone else had a question, or someone, I think Bill was trying to speak, but you were muted. Nope. Okay.
Oh.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing this, and then the next item on the agenda is the audit. So shall I move into that, Steve? Okay.
Please.
So the audit. So your treasurer, Lynn, is traveling, so she wasn't able to make it here tonight. But she has been wonderful, as is our bookkeeper, Darlene, is a complete rock star. I'll tell the same story that I told in executive committee yesterday. So last week, we planned to get all of our files to our auditor by, I believe, last week, Tuesday. And we got almost everything to her by the end of, by Tuesday morning, Monday night. We took a little bit more time on a couple of the items, and we got them in Wednesday morning. And then we received, over the weekend, we received a list of 12 or so additional deliverables that the auditor wanted as part of testing. So this is normal as part of an audit. You give all of your information up front, and then they have a look at it, and they sample certain things, so they want additional evidence just to make sure that you can back up what you're saying. And so our auditor sent it over the weekend and said, it would be great if we can get this by end of day Monday. And I know it's short notice, but we're busy and you're busy, and we're trying to hit some aggressive timeframes here. So let me know. And our wonderful bookkeeper, Darlene, got all of the items on there except for 2 of them needed my attention, but she got all of them done, and then I got my 2 done and submitted everything about 6:30 p.m. yesterday. So that is really amazing. I just want to call out how wonderful our bookkeeper is. So she's great to work with, really diligent, really responsive, and that was a bit of a mountain of work that she got through in a day. So basically where we are now is we've submitted everything to the auditor. The auditor is obviously looking through it and has sent through the testing questions. And I don't have any further information, so I'm sure she will come back to us with feedback and draft financials in due course. And the next step, when we have that, we will probably have some preliminary discussions between the core audit team, which is me, Darlene, our bookkeeper, and Lynn, the treasurer, and Bonnie, the auditor. And so once we're relatively satisfied that we think we have something which is ready for review of the finance committee, we plan to take it to the finance committee to review the draft financials. And then when they're happy and we're all happy, then we'll move to the executive committee. So we are well on target. I think what we have always wanted to have happen, and we've been quite late the last couple of years, is to be able to have the financial statements ready for approval at the May annual meeting. And I think we're on target for that. Having them by April would probably be a little bit aggressive, but I'm quite confident, unless we encounter some huge roadblock at this point, that we'll be on target to have those distributed for your review prior to the May meeting and approval in May.
So this is the 2025 audit.
Yep.
And to date, we have used the same auditor, Batchelder, for the work we've done. And I can say from a view on the outside, it was very slow and painful in the first year or 2 that we tried to prepare and issue our audit. But as we've progressed from year to year, we've gotten faster and better and more efficient and better able at understanding what's expected. And as a result, this is just remarkable from a historical perspective that we're so close to being done with the 2025 audit, just 2 months into it. So I know it's going to be longer than that, but still, it's quite remarkable. The other kind of side comment is that, in an interest of being diligent, Lynn is working on creating an RFP for an auditor services. And I think from my perspective, what I'm understanding from Lynn and Ellie, this does not represent the fact that we don't like what our current auditor is doing, but I think we feel like, as a matter of obligation, we want to make sure that we kind of test things out once in a while just to make sure we're getting the best services, and this is a good way to do it. So I think the intent there, Ellie, keep me honest, but my assumption is whomever gets awarded that RFP when it's issued or after it's issued will be handling our audit for 2026.
Yep, that is the plan.
Yep, great. Thank you. Any other questions for Ellie about our audit? Hey, we're winding down here, folks. Updates. Any other business you want to talk about? Things are picking up here, so this is a great opportunity. Anything on your mind, feel free to raise it now while you got an opportunity. You got the folks here to provide those answers.
Well, I have a question, Steve.
Sure, Ross.
Since we have some time, I was gonna hold off, but this is a question that's kind of been in the back of my mind, and I was hoping maybe Ellie or somebody could explain why, since, we're working all on grants, we don't have any loans or interest to pay, we got low overhead, minimal employees, why is it that we can't match or have lesser service costs than our competition? The one thing I was thinking is that, we need to build up funds to do maintenance, keep our network maintained. But I have no idea how much money we need to be putting aside for that. I'm sure WCVT has an idea for what they spend, and that would give us an idea of what we need to build up. But why is it that we can't have better pricing compared to the competition?
That's a great question, Ross. I'm glad you asked it. So there's a couple of factors that go into it. I mean, we are doing the best that we can to keep our costs low, but there are some costs that we don't really have control over that affect our overheads pretty significantly. So one of those, just off the top of my head, is pole rentals. I could look at our budget for what our budget for this year for pole rentals is, but as a percent of our total operating expense, it is really high. It is, for this year, we've budgeted $75,000 in pole rentals. So that doesn't, that affects costs. And then marketing is also a cost, customer acquisition. So the last time I did a break-even analysis, and these numbers are probably directionally accurate, but not accurate, is that we still need to have, if we have about 850 subscribers at the current average revenue per user, then we will comfortably be at break-even points, given the current level of staffing and given some reasonable projections of future increased costs. Having said that, once we're done with network construction, we won't necessarily need someone working as much as what I'm working, which is a conversation that we've had before. We can maybe move to more of a caretaker status, and then we can reduce some of our employee costs there. And the last I did that calculation, we would need to be at about 650 to 675 subscribers, which is right about where we see ourselves right now. But that is at the current average revenue per user. Now, if we drop our prices, so we pay WCVT, obviously won't say the exact numbers here in public session, but the amount that we pay them is per subscriber per month. And so obviously we have a floor. If we get too close to that, we're not going to have enough margins to be paying anything, right? Because our cost of goods sold, and actually you can look at our budget to have a sense of what our cost of goods sold is, which is our operator fees is the main thing there. We also have subscriber refunds, bad debt, bank service fees, and merchant credit card fees. So all of those things are reducing our total revenue. And then of the remainder, that's where we have some degree, but not a complete freedom to be reducing the costs there. So just to make it really clear, if we were to, prices generally tend to be sticky downward. So if we were to drop our prices now and our costs go up for things like pole rentals, I mean, that's set by a tariff that the utility company set with the Public Utilities Commission. If that was to increase by 25% in the future, we don't know. I mean, hopefully it doesn't happen. If it happens, then that's something that we have to protect against. Other costs may inflate, we are sitting in a pretty highly inflationary kind of environment. So part of it is just that we don't, it would be great to be able to drop our rates, but we need to make sure that we finish, my thinking is we need to finish construction, or at least have the end in sight, have a good look at how many subscribers we're able to get, potentially look at adding on other products and services, and maybe think a little bit hard about whether or not whether we want to cut the rates for everyone or whether we want to expand our affordability programs to cover more people. So I think it's a great question to be asking, but there is still a lot of fluidity in terms of what our actual costs are likely to be into the future. We are still a very new business. And so in my mind, cutting our costs right now would be a little bit risky. And the other thing, I don't know quite what's going on with GoNetSpeed, but it is pretty well understood in the market that Fidium has been very, very aggressive with their pricing, and I personally don't expect that to continue for the foreseeable future. I think it'll continue for a finite period of time, and then the prices will go up. So hopefully that answers your question. Something we should be thinking about, but not right now. Maybe 18 months to 24 months in the future.
And it sounds like a big part of it is we just need that critical mass of subscribers.
Exactly. And there's different ways to get the critical mass. You could have more subscribers at a lower price point, but if we drop the price points, maybe we get more subscribers, or maybe we don't, and then we just have less money. So
Right.
that's the general risk anyone has ever with pricing. So that's kind of where we are.
Thank you.
Ben, you had your hand up for a while. You still have a question?
No, I thought better of it. Thank you.
Okay, Justin, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Ellie's comment, Fidium, I know after the introductory period, it bumps you up to $100 a month. So we're pretty competitive against that. And then somebody today in Cornwall I was actually talking to, and they were like, Maple's great. It's actually cheaper than my trash. So like, I do think that we are reasonably competitive, even though we haven't even started to explore that. And I kind of like the Ellie's approach because it would be great to potentially also have enough funds to go into areas where we don't have grant money once we've had all the construction and what have you as well, so we can also compete there.
Yeah, because that is another point as well that we've talked about, is knowing that both Fidium and GoNetSpeed are owned by private equity. If at some point 10 or 15 years in the future, or maybe even sooner, the prices start to go up in areas where they don't have any competition, then people might come to the district and say, hey, we wish you could build. There's not going to be grant money available, and that takes, as we know, that takes tens of thousands of dollars a mile. So, but again, that's a policy choice the district could make at some point in the future to keep, to keep rates low or consider cutting rates, or to not, and watch what the competition does and build up a bit of a war chest.
Chris.
Yeah, so similar to Justin, people ask me in Weybridge what Maple Broadband is all about. So I'd love to get, if we're going to send around those talking points, I would give a big plus to that. And yeah.
Yeah, and that is a good question as well, because I think we get that question probably fairly commonly in the towns where Maple Broadband doesn't have a service footprint and won't have a service footprint as long as we're on friendly terms with WCVT, as long as they're not owned by private equity and acting like a bad actor. So what our sales pitch has been all along is, obviously they're the ones that run our back office, and so you don't want to be competing with people that are running your back office, because that wouldn't go over very well. But also they're a 100-year-old company with a great customer service record. If we had to go compete with them head to head, we would most probably not do very well as a new entrant. But the fact that we were working with them rather than against them enabled us to divide and conquer, both in terms of getting the grant funding and building, so that we were able to get faster fiber rollout across both of the areas than it would have been if we tried to do everything ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, yeah, I guess in Weybridge, we're in a particularly tough spot with Waitsfield as well. So that's something I've tried to convey to people, that we are building a lot of fiber, and we may eventually get out to here. But yeah, because we were already basically in their service area, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah. What do you mean by you're in a tough spot?
Well, my understanding is that we're fairly low on the build, like the list. I feel like we have I know a lot of people are on Waitsfield, and like my neighborhood, which is basically in Middlebury, we're all on either Fidium or Xfinity. And so I have sort of come to understand from the meetings that those aren't like high like value targets for us necessarily at this point. Is that still true?
Yeah, so that is a good point. There are some portions of Weybridge, like Morgan Horse Farm Road and some of the areas around that, that are not part of WCVT's traditional
Okay.
ILEC footprint, and those are part of Maple Broadband's territory. And in theory, we could build those, but because of that, they're not eligible for grants. And there's a lot of areas of our district that are in the same boat where we don't have service now. We're not going to have grant funding to build them. They have one or two existing broadband providers. And as Steve pointed out, we do have some town ARPA money, and one of the things to consider is what to do with that money if there are certain areas where we think there's a good business case. So stay tuned on that, but there's not enough money in there to be building every single mile of our district. Obviously, we would need many more millions to be able to do that.
Yep.
And
makes
then
sense.
the other
Yep.
thing, the other thing you're touching on, Chris, and this is something that Nancy has raised before, and we've spoken with Waitsfield about. They come to our governing board twice a year to show us how many passings they have where fiber is an option, and then to just do a Q&A, because their situation is similar to ours, but also different than ours. So we're a new entrant. We're building fiber along the road, and when someone orders service, we go and we connect the household, and that takes as long as it takes, and that's the process. They're different because they are the incumbent. So outside of areas where Comcast is competing with them, they have the customers already on DSL, and they have customers that they've had for a long time, and it is actually, in all fairness, it is a big lift for them, even when the fiber is on the road, to connect every single household, because they have, I don't know how many customers they have, but they have lots and lots of customers, and just there's only so many hours a day, and there's only so many trucks. And so part of the challenge part of the situation on the ground is that there are residents of these towns, and they don't have fiber yet, even though their neighbors do it, even though there's fiber on the road, because Waitsfield hasn't gotten there yet with their own internal prioritization. And that is what it is. And it's not really our job to be micromanaging how they make those decisions, because there's a lot of people in all of our member towns. Some of them have fiber and some of them don't. But if you have questions about that, when the next time they come here is July, and you can feel free to ask them about that. But I think we should understand and acknowledge that is an actual difficulty from the resident standpoint. It's not great to be waiting, and from their standpoint, they would, I'm sure, like to have everyone on fiber yesterday if they could. But that's just, there's only so many hours of the day and only so many available crews to be doing the work.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Zapata.
So, Ellie, we talked about this both in the governing board and the executive board, as far as whether or not our media company could put together talking points that are specific to each town, because each town does seem to have its own place within the process of this build out, and a variety of considerations or options that exist within each town, whether it's Fidium based or the internet, HughesNet or whatever, that's in competition or not in competition. And we've talked about wanting to have empowering us as individuals and delegates, representatives, to be able to share information, whether it at town events or at town meeting. And certainly if we're going to be moving into volunteering, to be able to speak intelligently about what is Maple Broadband, where are we at, what are we doing, what towns are we serving, that having some of those more town-specific materials that are available to us to say, oh, well, you're a Ripton resident, this is where we're at right now. Here's a brochure, or this is what I can tell you. We're at least a year out or 18 months because of these circumstances. But Weybridge, this is where we're at. And I'm just wondering where we might be in developing some of those materials, or what your thoughts are around that.
So another great question, and Actually, interestingly, a very similar topic came up on the call that I had earlier with London Middlebury, because Ashley, she went on our behalf to the Salisbury town meeting, and she just asked me for a couple talking points ahead of time, and so I sent her some bullets. I said, well, we have service here and here, and like this portion we're planning to build under BEAD, and the rest of it we're not planning to build because it's already served. And she asked me today, she said, well, that's great. Do you have that for other towns? And I said, well, yes and no. It depends on the town. Like if you look at Cornwall and Orwell and Shoreham and Whiting, we have it more we have service everywhere except for these routes, and like these are coming pending construction, and these were not because GoNetspeed already has fiber there, and we're prioritizing getting access to people who don't have, and then we'll circle back and have a look at the areas that have existing broadband competition, and if we have funds left, where we have the flexibility to serve them. But some of the other towns are much more complicated because I said, now think about Ferrisburg. You've got like Swiss cheese holes all over the show. Like it doesn't like fit nicely into 3 bullets the way that Salisbury and some of the other towns happen to do. But what I did say is one of the things that I plan to do by the end of the month or so is to update Crowd Fiber, which, as you know, that's the system where people go to express interest, and it shows the active service zones, and it shows areas where we are pending construction. And pending BEAD, I didn't really touch that because I didn't want to start going and putting BEAD routes into there. But now that BEAD has been more provisionally approved and we're just waiting on our grant, one of the things that I do want to do, because that's also going to help with the affordable drop program marketing, is we've had a lot of people who've filled out the affordable drop program information who are in BEAD territory. So it's great that they're interested enough to fill out a form saying that they want help with their installation costs. But the good news is they're going to get their installation costs covered under BEAD. The bad news is they have to wait for BEAD. But it seemed to me that being able to have better information for consumers to understand what's happening, because conceptually, people are falling into one of 3 categories. Either we have service now, we have the funding to build, and we've committed to build it. We can't necessarily say when, but if you're a BEAD address, we'll get to you at some point over the next couple of years. And addresses where we don't currently have plans to build. And so getting the map up where it more cleanly delineates those 3 things. And then we already have on our website, as you know, we have the town-specific pages, which are kind of vague, actually very vague. And being able to put up a town-specific map that's showing these, I think we'll be able to help that, because like your town, where you live. So if there was actually a town-specific map, I mean, a lot of the information is there already, but it's not as user-friendly as it could be. So that was where we had the conversation today of I'm going to do that, and then because they've basically asked the same question that you've asked, and so we've kicked off literally just a few hours ago. Here's how we're going to go about at least sorting people into those 3 categories. Great minds think alike. You might have a future career in marketing.
Yeah, I'll stick to the wetlands. But thank you. That's really helpful. I appreciate it.
We're running close to our end of our meeting time. In the absence of any other updates and questions, I guess let's move on and wrap this meeting up. Just a reminder, I think we've had this conversation maybe in more detail at our last governing board meeting. If any of you feel like you are able to do so, and you could reach out to one of our delegates or alternates wants to reach out to Panton and Whiting and offer to represent them at the governing board meeting, I think, and I want to make sure that Ellie keeps me honest on this, but I'd say offhand, for example, if Ben wanted to represent Panton as well as his own town, he can do that provided the town appoints him as a delegate, at which point he's a super delegate. How am I doing, Ellie? Is that about right?
Shannon has his hand up.
Yeah, excuse me. I just wanted to let you know that I had a conversation with the town manager for Panton, and he expects to have a delegate. He wanted to get through town meeting first, but I think that they won't be vacant for very much longer.
Awesome.
Great.
You taking away my super delegate status already?
I'm sorry. Maybe Whiting's
Well,
in the card for
Whiting might appoint you, Ben.
You're
enough.
super anyway, Ben. You're super anyway. Yeah. So I had emailed both Panton and Whiting to remind them that they are not currently being represented. And Panton had emailed me back. So Shannon, that's a great update. I'm gonna say Whiting, I got no response from my email either. So I don't know where their town is at as far as even staffing, response, priorities, etc. So it might be best in that circumstance to actually put forth and just email them and say, Ben is willing to be a representative for your town as he is currently for Bristol. We just need your approval. Probably being more proactive with them as opposed to nicely asking.
Nancy,
I had thought that at our last governing board meeting, I might have dreamt this, but I had thought that Bern Terry said he was going to reach out to Whiting too.
He did say that, yeah. I haven't followed up with him on that, but I will. He and I have been communicating.
That would be great.
so,
Thanks,
yeah.
Ken.
excellent.
Just as another point to kind of echo what Zapata was saying, I don't know if we've ever thought about, maybe sending a one-page call for support to various towns that they can post on their town boards, just to call attention. I know a lot of people do drop-bys for town offices when they go to pay their taxes and such. So maybe we can send a nice branded something to the town managers to post in their town offices.
Or another option is, and I'm not obviously within the Whiting area, but Front Porch Forum. It at least in my town, as a small town, it's like who you know. And so it's like, oh, I think so-and-so might be interested in serving on the Conservation Commission. Let me reach out to them. Or so-and-so might be interested in being a delegate for Maple Broadband. Let me reach out to them. As opposed to more of a, hey, Maple Broadband is looking for a delegate from Whiting, and then all of a sudden the select board receives interest from 3 different people who say, I'd be interested in doing that.
Well, folks, it's a great conversation, and it sounds like we're making a little bit of progress. So that would be good news, very, very good news. So thanks for all your efforts to try to make our tent just a little bit bigger. It is 6:30, and I think we've covered everything we need to cover. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
Second.
We got several motions. So thanks everyone for joining. We'll talk to you in a month.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thank you all. Good night.
Okay.